kunche kande kugubi kote ngazu lagi.
Gonda gratis lepso, aninga komaso, ngaso tambo che nyembe kapso, kunlon tan kunche
Kunlong
ni.
dong kunche kote yi.
Oh, la so. So at the outset, I will speak a little bit about the intention and the sort of conduct that we ought to have while listening to the Dharma.
Tende yinba yindu ta kunlong de ngazu kunlong zombo. Sosu ke chidu ma yinba. Senchi tongje soje tobi ki chidu. Senchi tongje la dewa tobi ki chidu la ani ngen ki Nagajuna ki letter to friend de nyegi ye somba tende di shena di yesar.
So to begin with, the intention should be a good one, which is not a selfish intention, but one which is for the benefit of others. So thinking that for the sake of all beings attaining Buddhahood and for all beings' happiness, I will now listen to these teachings on Nagajuna's letter to a friend.
Ani karse kuruko. Chi hienki de mimba kepa ki no shinji yinba sam. Chi nyenki roni de neba yinba rabu ji sam. Ani chi de mi yinba rabu ji sam. Mi de sa ne neba de nele tagi yeba no shi. Chi de nyole she ne ani koi le kanga le tagi yeba rabu. Tende ki sonu de kushi ne ani chi de la donote ne nyengu yeba tende ki yesari. Agoso hai. Agar raison.
Yes, our translator is having a little bit of a technical problem.
Not us, no?
He will come back, so I think it'll be okay.
So sorry. So I guess when it's not Kempula's internet having issues, then it's mine. So I'll just pick up from what the last part I heard was, which is now while we're listening to the Dharma, we should remember a few things. We should think that the one who's teaching the Dharma is a skilled doctor. We should think of ourselves as a patient, someone who is sick. We should think of Dharma as the medicine. And we should listen with the recognition that through listening to the Dharma and then applying this medicine, we can become cured of the disease which afflicts us. In other words, it is possible for us to become free from samsara.
Ane nga zo chi nyendu ta nawa te de yila zun ne nyen guru se la yirwa. Shezo nga zo chi nyenbu ka su la gegin ke kare la ya la nawa te ane san la tendo de zun tuba zo tende shiguru ma do yin ane chulu sa ki bading ka buga ba no shen tang ane badi de ole ma chu tendo ya da bo tende chondo na ane yabo ye ma se ye ye ro ta teso la gu ye sare.
Konda hakumaso kenki tambo de ngaso nyendu nangwa te gores tene
Ye la zongures
yila zongores re jengores.
si la nawal te sen la zong.
So as we listen, it is important that we pay attention and that we're able to remember what is being said so that we do not immediately forget whatever was taught after we've heard it.
다 대소 강가 예바 신의 친년주대 nengo chogiris 가침부.
So it is important to have all of these aspects in mind as we listen to the Dharma.
애니 셰바데 다 셰바 좀보 가 가르세고 concentrate zone good behavior shile nye guire la indus.
So the behavior, the conduct should be good. So we should endeavor to be concentrated and not busy ourselves.
그래서 다른데 인도 가정 건도 가족이 루드게 로주테 해 자와리 아니 지금 동복게 자보 대시 좀볼라 아니 루드게 letter to friend 때 저런 로존 셰나 야보 예레스 아니 저런 로존 셰야라 차진 강가 총 예레스 대소도 아니 나기 letter to friend 때 야보 팀 메바 있나요 된다 야보 예레 아니 텔라 녀지 마지슬 근데 기케자트소다 가좀 피해서 하고서
So in our last session, we finished covering the biography of Nagarjuna, and we also discussed the first verse in which Nagarjuna encourages the king Dechizampo to listen to these verses, and that the king has all the conditions necessary to hear these teachings and to make use of them. And then in the second verse, it was said that even though Nagarjuna is explaining his own verses are not very well written, the contents are very profound and good. So please don't look down on these verses.
다 데링 아주 지제 숨바 데히 예로와 투벌 진부 까니 니구히 제지 투스 따요 체메지 도달레지 군다 다웨나 체거니주 끼데 미질라스 라긴도와 다델라 도반다부 질레와레.
All right, so now we'll go on with verse number 3, which reads as follows. While you have surely learned and understood the mighty sage's many lovely words, is it not so that something made of chalk, by moonlight lit, shines gleaming whiter still?
단데 가르라 예르스나 루두 코노라 도반다부 질레바레다. 가르스나 땡제 짱동데 야보시 짱예 마로와 짱메라로와 다 이나요 가르라 예르라두 아니 다 단달루드 콩길라야데 소제지 까레스 아니 야보 대시 좀보 초롱 그 파치 하코차 예주레스 세존다 나 니마 하코차레셔 아니 단도 미사 고야 문두 아니 나 히딩데 로존 시그알라 기바 문두다 보던데 소노 코나스 아니 디 소노 된 코야 예 마레스 초롱 용조 로존 셰나 다루 기바 좀스 예리 나레 로바지 이 고야 메나요 나 고데바데 사부 쳐바동 데라 간차 테발라 소바데 기바 좀스 예리 세상 아니 저런게 루두 콩게 디가죠 히비티데 용조 녜나 케페 예레스 라바레 고소해
Koson. So now this verse is as if responding to a doubt that Nagarjuna is anticipating in King Dechizampo. So essentially, Nagajuna was in the second verse saying that, oh, it's not written well, and the Buddha's words are maybe the reason that it is the Buddha's words is why you should listen to it. But then the king might think to himself that, oh, well, I've already heard the Buddha's words, I've already studied them. So since I already know this, then there's no need for me to read this text in particular. But Nagarjuna is saying, please don't think like this, because if you continue to study, and this text in particular, what you read before, what you've studied before will become clearer, and you'll also get sort of reinforcement for your good tendencies, for your good habits. So there's actually a lot of benefit to reading this text.
근데 인바 인도 아니 소재지 깔데 니구레스 인도 니구세나 소재지 깔데 가두 이나 녜네 근데 셰나 페미시 게와 자침볼래야 예조지 레스 근데 인도 디 준세 텔 소노 똥셰네 아니 자보 데지 좀보 조롱 영조 히틴데 하코데 예나요 녜나 핀 예레스라서
So whenever we have the chance, actually, to listen to the words of the Buddha, to read the words of the Buddha, there's a lot of virtue in that. So with this reason in mind, Nagarjuna is telling the king that even if you know what's written here, there's still benefit to hearing it again.
Pena soje jondindege yo waran nasle dimbagi kor kete here shage pumburila heshin tombani kor kete here ene yo yomba kin la so teso la tsini sungi kete teso here wa hezo ta tende noshin teso yonjo nye deba yina ene kowa cher ndo ya don ta toni ke tendon rabula kowa hobod leba la so tende pendo mombo jiyere hezo yonjo nyena pendo hiro ndu ke indu ene jabo deje zombo cheki nyero naasle ta tende labare
Oh, Yambachen la karesumbaresa?
tsini me ba sum ta sansan bi ko ndabo hero wa zonzi tombe ko ndabo
Oh, las
ta
So, for example, the Buddha gave a lot of different teachings. So, for example, in Varanasi, he turned the wheel of the Dharma for the first time and taught on the Four Truths. In Rajagriha at Vulture Peaks Mountain, he taught about emptiness. And in other places, he taught on the three teachings without characteristics. So listening or reading these teachings again and again brings a lot of benefit, such as, for example, one's understanding of emptiness will become clearer and clearer.
ta tela peji he yins dota leji gunda weji na chegani tu komba kabo do kamare bag zogo jo komba ji na ko shidon kabo res nina yo gonka ge seba chenga ge dawa de we de po aina kabo yimba de yonjo kabo chaba no shi ani ha ko sawa ina yu de yonjo lojo shewa ina ani sarndo ya so tende ge junse yeba tende re shezan ani jabo de shi so bo choron ludu kongi ke go jo hibiti de yonjo nye na yo geba junse ndu se ta de labare.
So this point is made by ways of this example given in this verse. The example being one of a white house made of chalk, of white stone or mineral. And as this house then is touched by the light of a wintertime moon, specifically on the 15th of the lunar calendar, when the moon is full. When the light from such a moon hits this kind of house, even though it was already white, it's as if it becomes even whiter. So in the same way, studying this text again and again will, even though we know what is taught in here, will make our understanding clearer and clearer.
다
So
된대
therefore,
인바 인도 계속
so
다
therefore,
된대 인바 인도로 라서
Kiransunta.
다 된대 인바 인도 루도게 directly jabu deshi zombol deso la yero indirectly ngaron sola la yere tapena ngaron soge lojon lodo nogindabo mombo ko dewa inayo yonjo nyenyi maro wanda botende nesu yerwa 세상 용조 년이 마루 위기 내수도 쳐야 말이 용조 년와 이나 아니 로치스로야라 핀도 쳐야 된다고 근데 예르스 된도 근데 고고야 돼 indirectly 라이에다
So Nagarjuna encourages the king in this way, right? And indirectly, he is also encouraging us. So, for example, it's also the case that with the four thoughts that turn the mind to Dharma, it's a little bit like we could never get enough of hearing those and contemplating upon those. So, listening to the teachings again and again actually greatly benefits us in that it helps our minds turn towards Dharma.
다 요 준세 신바지 시에를 다 지제 단다 이박 다 대박 코드 시에 대박세야 돼 자치부 희부지 임바 대박세야 돼라 때네 아니 예된 강간 중고양다고 대발라 때네 현주기선 제일 시구이레 대발라 때네 이제 제일 시구이레 대발라 때네 소제기 신라데 나론도 토구이레 라미기 신라데 토구이레 아니 레갈레야 이나요 대발라 때네 샤왈론도 우야라서 받는 도구이레스 세존 대방 devotion faith 가르라기르타데 자치부 희보지에바 디그 코데 디 로도 콩기타 모데시이르타용
So another reason here is given in the fourth verse, being that one should listen out of faith. It is actually the case that all good qualities come from faith or devotion. Bodhicitta is something we can give rise to by means of faith initially. We are able to receive the blessings of the Buddha as well as of our gurus if we have faith. And any action that we might want to accomplish will be accomplished through having faith.
Hindu 대바세야데 아마 노신지레스 아마 델라테네 투구데 다 야부 쳐구기로와 데노시 대바 델라테네 아니 나론소기 제라 예틴데소 강갈레 구기레스 셰도 대바 세야데 자치부 히오지레스 라예
So faith can be likened to a mother because based on the mother, then a child turns out well, basically. So faith is then something which gives rise to all kinds of other good qualities. So it's very important.
근데 이번 인도다 대바데 단다 나론소 그 잘라 예마리스 다데 세선 대바데 예바 조구기레스 대바데 예와 조야라 레간데 마수나 레가 일레구기레스 텔라게
But unfortunately, we don't have this kind of faith currently. So in order to get this kind of faith or produce this kind of faith, there are four things that we need to do.
근데 인바 인도 다 가담빌 라마 테소 길라야 테소 케제데 레바렌데라 동보 주 동보데 라마 야보지 게겐 야보지라 땡그그레스.
So the Kadampa lamas have a saying that at first the cause is to rely on a good teacher.
아니 니바데 데네 치라 대바 인기 도보 야보지 구기레스.
And secondly, one needs friends who have faith in the Dharma.
아니 숨바데 치와 메타비 코도 레준데 코이니미 코테소 용용 소노 동구그레스. 주 숨바데 대바 시직 주 숨바.
So then the third is that one needs to reflect again and again on impermanence, death, and karma and causes and their effects.
아니 주 유바데 소제긴도 몽볼로그 그레스. 페나 도 존노타부. 근데 로 셰바이나 도 몽볼로운도 아니 퀄리티 몽보 하고 그라 소제도 슌주 셈바키. 아니 대바데 레우 그레스. 어든데 라소.
Domin kanre.
도 존롱 세야 근데 예런 좀다 공제 켄조 지스트 빈돈다와 치 켄조 겐드 켄조 계속 예된 회사 도 예로 Sutra of Trili Jurila denedabo.
So then the fourth cause is that one needs to read sutras which speak about the qualities of the three jewels and of the bodhisattvas. And through doing that, one will then get faith in the three jewels.
다 준신 대소라 때네 아니 대바 예바 저기레스 아니 대바 대자치고 임바데 페나 조제 빠데 아드가 누마 벨 페두 아니 콘자라 미지레네 조제라 나라 신라 테로나 신라 노로나스 슈바로와 아니 조제 빠데 아드가게 나라 초롱기 대바 지테도 아니 녜 초롱라 신라 테초라로와 세존 테인두 라마도 소제도 존주산부 군덴라 가조 신라 토구게나 아니 가조 대바 예구기레스 세존 대바 대자치고레스 드네히예.
So based then on these causes, it is possible to obtain the kind of faith that we need. So there's a story which illustrates this, that when the great master Atisha went to Tibet, someone once asked him for a blessing, and then Atisha replied to him, "Give me your faith and I'll give you a blessing." So essentially, if we would like to receive the blessing of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, then first we need to generate faith.
제가 놓지 제자 멜라르바기 숨바레 나론솔라 대바데 야가게 무반노신 리스 코 템보 주니에 마리스 제서 대바데 템보 차야라 determination zoli cendu zone 아니 대바데 템보 예바조 구기레스 대바 메나 아니 가조 니도 토야 예 마리스 라이에
Tempo zoela.
cendu 시구레스 diligence zone.
So similarly, the great yogi Milarepa said that faith, the faith that we have, is like mist in the summertime. It's not stable. It's something which is constantly shifting and changing. So in order to make it stable, we need to be diligent. We need to work hard. Because without a stable kind of faith, then we won't be able to reach any kind of good results.
Shezada work hard zo gudu dajin kondo deba leala juji she so desol sono tone any deba de yewa zo gugindoa.
So since it is the case that we need to put in the work, we need to work hard, we have to reflect on these four causes, which I just explained very well, and make sure to have faith, to give rise to faith.
Shezan nonju ngazo lagi re debi alon mena ring of faith de mena any nije jojin denta mesidu compassion gilega kan zo tugi maris shezon deba de gugiris larwa tinde junsen desol sono tone any deba se de ta kachebu imba hakugugere.
Ninja ki chagyu de sui re de lama ki re sangi ki re
Ta ngaron zo compassion laya jera nuba chimbuji degi lega zogi mari la yer.
There's also something, a kind of example which is normally given, which is that faith is like a ring. And without this ring of faith, then the hook of compassion won't work, essentially. So this tells us then that faith is something very crucial.
Shezon tate shitong gone deba se de condition ne zogu yeba za chibu kande yimba ta logi do te so de ne ma he shebarwa ta deba te sozo gi jela yena ani ti deba de yaje ton ya le kare zogu gi se tewa ji le yerwa shezo ti gi lendula ani pangen pa baludu ki tanda tije yiba de sum shene tende shi yerida.
So now I've sort of described in general how one should give rise to faith and why it is important. But then there's a question which comes, right? Which is how to then make it increase. And the answer to this question will be given by Nagajuna in the 4th verse.
Jave soje chedon gendedon tondon soje laje temba tu aradu kaza tedo sosui yeten soji jesu temba chise lagindoa ta jeren tu seya jeres jesu temba tu seya jere tela focus so gugure labare te kare sedu jesu temba sedu ta soje jesu temba che jesu temba gender jesu temba tonwa jesu temba ane karse Suren jesu temba, hla jesu temba se lagindoa, jesu tenya ka tenga sedu, kozo ki yeten teso, kozo ki quality teso, ani temba, heba, hakoa she ne, ani tei je ne, kenju sung teba teze ye na, ani teba de yabo yeba tende chabala soba, ta zotu gires, shezon, ta teso lega teso zo gures la yer. Te soje ki sung re labari luduki.
So in this 4th verse, then it is said that 6 things there are the victors have explained, and all their virtues you must keep in mind: the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, bounteous acts, and moral laws and gods, each one recall. So essentially there are 6 things to remember, being the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, generosity, discipline, and the gods. And by recalling these again and again, we will know the qualities that they possess. And then the little faith that we have now in the 3 jewels will be able to improve. We'll be able to improve upon the faith that we already have. So therefore, we have to do what this verse tells us, which is to do these remembrances.
Pena soje jesu temba sedu soje ge 꾸이에데 투기에데 송기에데 데소 다소노 땅네 아니 소제게 제스템바셰네 아니 소소게 페트데 빌 앞조구레 라와 답변은 소제 송기에데 치지분부 제드기도 라서바 다 몸부 기복이 예로와 아니 데소 빼미시 페 침보 예로와 아니 투기에데 도도 넘바 건도 센지기 타는 소노 동대한다고 아니 꾸이에데 센সম부 손지존이도 배제좀부 자식이 떼고 반다고 다 kanju jis trimbe kindo gnola mombo hiwo ji ye yiro ada deso kanga jis tringu ndo ta mombo la na gozo go thangiro
거다 꾸이 연탄데 양저치 손으로나
kuye kuye ten se de ta tenzo bo sonji sonji do peje zo bo jeju ki tego ba
아,
se yero
so then, for example, to remember the Buddha, we think about the qualities of the Buddha's body, speech, and mind. And by doing this, we'll be able to build up our faith. In terms of the Buddha's speech, he gave 84,000 different teachings, which are all very beneficial. In terms of the Buddha's enlightened mind, he is always engaged in thinking of benefiting sentient beings. And in terms of the Buddha's body, it's endowed with 32 major and 80 minor marks.
ta den da bo jiro ani che kenju se de che se de dharma se de ro ta jezo che de lojun she de she wa ina koala tane taba toya de yo le yere pena mi mantong gi ji na mi gi thongba cho yere anjo mago kin ji na anjo ge korto wa de la so ba ta chi gi ye de mo bo ji ke gira dambi chi ni thoma ge wa do padu ge wa do thama ge wa res ne ta konje laba song ge kor de he gi ye du ni me gi do thoma ge wa padu ge wa thama ge se res wa ro o te so kangal so no tong she wa ina ene kanjo sun도 담비치라 대바데 체르로에서 근데 거가 우예레스
So this is how it is then. Turning to the Dharma, if we study the Dharma well, then it is possible for us to reach freedom, to be free from samsara. There are also many stories of Dharma study or the blessings of the Dharma leading to the blind being able to see and the deaf being able to hear. It is also said that the Dharma is good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end. So thinking of these facts, then we can increase our faith in the Dharma as well as in the three jewels.
테네 다 겐더 지스 겐두 예데데 다 레버리 구바도 톰버리 구바도 샤샤웨 바도 세노 소스기 힌세한다고 도나 겐더 세야데 단다 shonju senpa tezo teba chenpi gendo tezo la ye rwa. Teba chenpi gendo tezo senje ki ten mombo ji shi ye re. Ta mi tezo le katen duya ndogi ye re, pento shi ye re, kari shi ye re. Ta tezo ngune sono tong sheba ina, ene pento hibo ji shi ye rwa, zombili la. Shezon ta tende ge gone, ene yon teba dile ya zotu giris.
Kempola tambo sonyate karere. 먼저 gen전 선엄 싱딩아
Seno
코솜
sasi
드네디
shin, ane
어레
tombol guba, lebar guba se.
정벌 슈퍼 레버 슈퍼 라나
Ta lebar guba la na ta kozo pe misi sheno yabo shi senche le pen ta ane tombo she na ta ji tsuren sung che yabo shi ta tenden da wo keja rawa.
So then turning to the Sangha has a lot of qualities such as teaching the Dharma to others, benefiting others, keeping the discipline of vows. They are also a field of merit. And then especially when we think about the Mahayana Sangha, meaning the bodhisattvas. Bodhisattvas are beings who work very hard for others' benefit and accomplish a lot of good for other beings. So once again, thinking of these different qualities of the Sangha, we can make our faith even more stable.
Any ta yiba tongwa jistimbas, tongwa sena danruwa, giving ruwa. Shesangazo giving shena, any mao balonshe chibu chogiri se, keja yerwa, tesol sono tongu yere. Tene ngazo tsurin, discipline yabo she tene shena, any ngazo dewa togiruwa. Ngazo shelon yabo majewa ina, ten nyoda mumbu une ngazo dewa toya ye marwa. Chezo ta tesol sono tong shewa ina, any deba de chirin ro togiris.
So then we come to what's called in the text here bounteous acts, which really refers to giving, generosity. So there's this saying that by practicing generosity, we ourselves will come to have many possessions in the future. So this is a benefit of generosity. And then moral laws, which really refers to discipline and restraining our behavior. So if our behavior is not good, then we'll have a lot of problems and we're not going to be happy. So it is then said that having discipline leads to happiness.
Tene la jins chenpa se nga zo la yu le suwa ina, ta shibo tobo hibo yeri la yerwa, shezan la yu le ya ge koz yerwa, teso de gewa ndabo, shamba gamba ndabo teso rwa, ani teso sono tona yon, gambi chi la teba le ugiris.
So then which number would this be? The fifth?
6.
Oh, sixth. Sorry, I can't count. The sixth is the remembrance of the gods. So it is normally taught that if one were to arrive in the realm of the gods, in heaven, as it were, one will feel extremely happy there. And then there are causes for going to heaven, for taking birth in the God realm, which is to practice virtue, essentially. So reflecting on this, then we are further sort of inspired, and our faith in the Dharma grows.
Shezan ta teso soje jamden deki, ani xe yerwa, teba de yaje tonguna, ani jiren chuk kol sono tongore sele, ani soje jamden deki sun sons, ani jiren chubo de soso de quality teso sono tong shene, ani teba de yaje tongore da sele, ta luduk nyesu, jabu deshi zombo la shene, indirectly ni ngaron solo la yerta.
So, therefore, then, these are the Buddha's words. The Buddha said that if you want to improve your faith, then you should practice these 6 remembrances. And not just to the king, the Zangpo, and indirectly to us. You know, if you want to improve your faith, then you better practice these.
Yeah, the better practice la fe ye jumarda. Try zona lana. Ta central number sentence that the number ngabari ta 5th sentence is ro
La.
ta kase tije ngaba.
So now we'll go on to the fifth verse.
Tal ludu gisungi du ngazo gisemba de tsoma zogugures. Any semba tsoma zoela any migechu de pa pon aton gewa chu de tsu doya. Donc tini yon jimba ton ya do tsurin son ya so tene glega shi gugures keja te che yindu.
Also, gewachu drup, migewachu pang, tene.
Any jimba yon ton gugure tsurin yon son gugure one rimbejin de che yindu.
So in this verse, in verse number 5, Nagarjuna is speaking about how we need to purify our minds. In order to purify our minds, we have to practice the 10 virtues and abandon the 10 non-virtues. And then there's a few other things that we need to practice as well in terms of the discipline which needs to be kept, which will be taught later on.
Tante shidong rwa, ngazo misu yina, nomba yina da, menanda, semba tsoma sena semba zombo, semba yabu gugiri la yerwa. Kezo semba yabu do tsoma tende gugiri na ngazo lega duja desu lena, eni ngazo semba shibu do tobu tende onya ye marwa. Kezo ta de nengo chebu chogi re ngune sheba yina.
So actually, in general, whether one is a Buddhist or not, whoever one might be, people would usually say that a pure mind means a good mind, a kind state of mind. If we do bad things, harmful things, then we don't feel very happy, right? So this is a very important point.
Gewi lelang chubo ludone. Ngado yiji ta do tenji he sele ta tombo sije jige tsikon tombo nimbo de he. Ane mige chu te so kare kare imba keje de he yerwa. Chezo ta mige wa chu se ji yere se yere. Pa pongo ya. Mige wa chu se de ane luki gone song ngag gone she. Ane yiji gone song she ane chu chao yere es. Chezo mige wa se de kande jiri se yirla na. Nebu duja tenkin tende jila migewa se yires. Nebu yabu tenki jila gewa se yires. Tate kike yere. Mige chude rongin ke kana mandawa se yadere. Rongin kano mandawa lana misha tong traba lama sugi zona yon ini migewa chaune nebu dunga nyo gunke tende ki rite la laware. Koson.
Oh, kosan.
Yabunda dako.
So now just covering the first two lines of verse number 5, it says, with body, speech, and mind always rely on wholesome deeds, the tenfold virtuous path. So here there are 10 non-virtues to give up and 10 virtues that one should practice. The 10 non-virtues then consist of 3 of the body, 4 of the speech, and 3 related to the mind, making 10. So in general, non-virtue is defined as an action which gives a bad result, which leads to suffering, basically. And then virtue, on the other hand, is something which is naturally good, let's say. So no matter who engages in such kind of actions, whether they be a lama, a monk, or a lay person, everyone will have the same kind of results from that action.
Te indu luk gone somte so chepa maji limba, misong sheba.
So then the three related to the body, the three non-virtues related to the body are killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct.
Paji sexual misconduct de inji mari. So jeba, sexual misconduct de paji chungsa je tsane tenderwa. Ta paji ina tan diyer. Okay.
Mitsang chepa lanang also impure behavior jina kandido.
Ta paji tan disari, ta kare lana disari.
Also,
Chorong laya de yabu du karsana, chungsa jaju desu jemi shenpa sandu, jemi chungsa jaju choka kinsa sanduwa ina, ene migewa chokinduwa.
no, dere.
Datere. So je sedu, sanche kande ji so je na ta jibare, inji menji mis so je jibu la ye mare. Ene kushi la na ta tahi shene kushi nanda, zimbo onye tonne kushi nanda. Oda, dende de la, ene lugi migewa cho la ye.
Konta, also semchen kare se shanayan, tene so cheba chagires, tene dijela.
Ene kushi ya, tif ya de, soso
Ale,
ge, tahi zone kushi mikitsane chalo toya shenanda, yona oncha dabu peshe taune shenanda, ta jibare kumarong re.
ngoso chala kurang kumaku neandra, yamana wangcha dabojik kuneandra chikpares.
Ta nga zo chalo de mikitsa len guna, kage ge ngo debu tane, kecha nyimbu dabu hiene lenya zogirwa. Kage ge yon oncha dabu yena oncha peshe tune lenya zogirwa. Ta teni kare zona yon kuma chogires. Ku sheba chogires.
So then, when it comes to killing, we would say that actually it is not just limited to killing a human being, which becomes the non-virtue of killing, but actually any kind of being. And then regarding stealing, whether we steal something by simply taking it with our hand or by convincing someone by sort of speaking in a very devious and skilled way, or if we sort of acquire something which should not belong to us by using our influence or power, then that is also considered stealing, actually.
Tene tanda de lata soa. Eni debe loba sheba lata roa.
Gonda, depuis l'auberge de l'armason. Tene di kora
De
kare.
la ta pena chungsa jatsana eni choga hindo de jemi hindo ndona. Eni debe loba sheba ki migewa de chogiri. Ta zaza shigures.
And then as regards to the last one, to act improperly out of desire, sometimes also called sexual misconduct. Essentially, if you're already married and then you sort of, do the deed with someone else, that is not your spouse, then this becomes the physical non-virtue of wrongdoing out of desire, basically.
Oda te sun la luji migewa sun la yerwa.
So these are the three non-virtues relating to the body.
Yini ngage zun la ba, tama shiba, si tsubu sheba, ngocha shiba se yirwa.
And then related to the speech, there are the four of lying, slandering, harsh speech, and idle gossip.
Lai laya de me yindo la, sono yindo ji zogo de la yere. Duki yin de joa was la yero. Shazam.
Voilà, comment ça?
Zum la ya jero, zum se de.
Hum,
Mai ba yimba zogo ya de la zum la yere.
hum. So to lie is to say that something is the case when it is not.
Ene dun tama la ya de me pensu tuhin je ya de la tama. Me ni tumbo me ba zogo ya de la tama. Te ni ba chimbore.
So slandering then, or sometimes also translated as divisive speech, is to make two people who are getting along become enemies, to sort of stir up some drama between them. And this is actually a grave fault.
Titsubo la na harsh word la yere.
So harsh speech means to use very rough language.
Ene ngacha la ya de tendo me ba keja mumbo hiero kosep zo de ya jero tele la yere.
And then the final one, idle gossip, means to basically say a lot of pointless stuff to gossip.
O ta teso la ngak mige wa ye la re.
And these are the four non-virtues related to speech.
Ta yeji mige wa sun se de nasen nesen lobatawa.
And the three non-virtues related to the mind are covetousness, ill will, and wrong view.
Nasen nesen sidu nasen la de yindo ge chalo yindo ge kosan da bola ngala thona kande yabundu son le de ge zoya de la yere nesen la na yin la kanga thena yabundu son ya da bo loda la na tsenga ju le junde ye mare se ya da bo tina la ye mare lona lu ye mare se ya da bo de.
Mm. Um, so then in this context, covetousness means to think, oh, how nice it would be if I could get something which someone else has. Ill will means to think, oh, it would be really good if something bad happened to this other person. And wrong view is to think that there's no such thing as karma, cause and effect, to think that there are no nagas in the deep places, nor any gods up in heaven. And these are then the three non-virtues of the mind.
O da deso la mige chu si yeres deso pa pong ga jo overzist la any gewa chu la yeres.
So these are called the 10 non-virtues. And to then abandon all of those and practice the opposite, the 10 is to practice the 10 virtues.
Ta mige wa kanga tino ndu yere wala na ndu ye bingi pa ye mare. Mige wa chembo deso kanga ndilo ndu ye ba yinsa any mige wa chu la ne tonga jane heba res.
So there's no certainty that every kind of non-virtue is included in these 10, but the major ones, the big ones, are included in this list. So therefore, it's important.
Ta tije tikon shima ni chona le do de yin gewa yi soa la yo ngeba geba ze sidu ta chon de alcohol de yon pong gures. Alcohol de mige chu hino la ye mare alcohol le de chebi kanu manto warwa soje ge kai che go jo ki mige warwa da jing huma de so rongin kanu manto wasene ani misha do taba do suyin de lega de zona mige wa chaba rwa shezon tende jusin re.
All right. So then the last two lines of the fifth verse read, avoiding liquor at all costs, thus find true joy to lead a life of virtuous deeds. So alcohol then is not included in the 10 non-virtues. Drinking is not a naturally unwholesome act per se, but indirectly it leads to a lot of problems. So therefore, it is something which we should try to avoid.
그래서 다 총세야 돼. 니바 강가 운사게 자완다보데 저대 예레스 소제ክ. 그래서 총데 기나 타고 히보레 라도 쇼한테서 총통야 예 마레스. 다 미샤 포몰로도 히로라기에 마레 이나요. 후체부 거네 아니 타발라마테서 라이에레.
Tabalamatoki?
후체야 돼.
So the Buddha has said actually that alcohol is the source of all faults. So it's really something quite frightening. And in general, it's said, I mean, of course, it's in the vows for monks and nuns that they absolutely cannot drink alcohol. So then for lay people, on the other hand, there's not such a prohibition per se, but it would be good to keep it in moderation, basically.
샤잔다 미샤 포모데서 총 히로 통하이나 아니 노미 펜주 뇨다우야 아니 페셔 조야 두제 조야 다 플라롬 몽보지 코스 조예로 데서 바지 감각 하 고기로와 제선 텐데 준셀라 때네요 아니 총데 페미시 니바 몽보지 준사인바 하고 투기레스.
So even for lay people, right? If one really drinks a lot of alcohol, then all of one's time and money is going to run out, basically. One will waste a lot of time and money. So from this, we can then know that alcohol is kind of a source of a lot of problems. And I think probably everyone knows this.
아니 미데서 라기라 코 라즈리 콜라 이치야예 마레스 이로와.
And, you know, people say, right, like, oh, that guy's a drunk. You can't trust him.
이나다 단다 그 두제라 alcohol tun chogi marese ladu. Ani lama teso explain shembaji zogindoa. You can drink but you cannot dance like indoa. Tate kande hinaro.
So nowadays,
21st century teaching in Zarawa.
there's something which is probably like a teaching specifically for the 21st century, which is that the lamas will sometimes explain these rules and regulations regarding alcohol that, oh, you know, it's okay if you drink, just don't get drunk.
Yena soja jamden de ite lagi mindu. Chon de neba chona yon tuya mes. Pena khar de neba chona sa chogi rese kongi jes no girwa. Yena chon de neba chona yon tun chogi me. Chon pe nyunyu jin tuna yon ani nga ge ploma me nga te ge temba me se tende he yindoa doa teso no la. Shezon pe nimi chebo yinba he yindu.
Sangi ki denera wachik sumares, nazo chang seati karesa shana shimares.
총 세대 배 니바 체보레스 미데
어,
나사 총네 총퉁구나 용 총게
네.
노와 떼기 말이스 칸다보이나 시동 사초기 마데 미데 나사 저 조보 초보 초나 카사와기 노와 떼긴도와.
네네네. But this is actually not what the Buddha taught. So, for example, there's the case that in general, meat is not something one is allowed to eat. But in the case of a sick person, if someone becomes sick, then they would be permitted to eat meat, and it wouldn't be a fault. There wouldn't be any problem with that. But no such permission is given for alcohol. So essentially, the Buddha is saying that if someone drinks alcohol, then that is not in accordance with my teachings.
Shezon ta ngima lojunda buji shea andwa lama yabuji any chan debaris rombaji sajala any pomon zemaji yesarwa any pomo de lama de gane any lama de gitsala lerwa pomo moron lere any ra yerwa ra ji chala tere any chong boto ji kune lerwa any lama de larwa ta choron teri yona chong tung gure yona ra se gure yona ngagi chala nya gure tende lega mazo waina nga su set zo yi larwa any lama de sono tongro 다 보목이 잘 냐나 nga domba khogire rasena nga soje binyeba pugire tan chontuna yogiris chontungro chontune razne any lega kanga zero sezo ta dneki josengone any nyeba mubundwa
So there's a story which illustrates this point. There was a very good lama who was staying in retreat near a village. And then there was a beautiful girl living in the village. And she went to the lama carrying with her a bottle of alcohol and leading along a goat. And then she said to the lama that, okay, so you have three choices. Either you kill the goat, you drink the alcohol, or you sleep with me. And then the lama thought, oh, well, I guess if I kill the goat, then I'll break the vow against killing. And if I sleep with this girl, then I'll break my vows to remain celibate. So I'll drink the alcohol. But then having drunk the alcohol, he did the other two actions as well. So this really shows us how alcohol is no good.
oh that didn't know any ta soa yondo nge budget tini nga zo soa long share jero saya tunya jero saya tunya deso yon positive gi jene lecho ge soa kishine any message gugiris ku shebanda bodon any chong dujo jabanda bo jaba jabanda bo tinde gi gone pesho zone message shena any digi maresele ta tinde gi advice teso kanga ludu ki jabo deshi zombol directly zone any indirectly ngaron sola la so ayimba tinde ji kogu yirta
Yeah, so that's how it is. And then in the last part of the verse, it also says that we have to lead a life. So leading a life then refers to we have to eat and drink. And to do that, we need to make a living. So our livelihood really should be a positive and wholesome one, which is in accordance with Dharma. We should not make our living in such a way that we're involved in stealing and cheating and otherwise harming other people, is what Nagajuna is telling the king, and indirectly then also telling us.
ta nga zo tije tubade longshe yowa nimbo menchine gelon tonse tendon hinala jimba tsugi tsaji parodo jinle gibi ninjo manchi so seta kare hegire lana ani ta nga zo sente tsoma chao tsana ani jimba tonya de kachi bundu sele yo jimba ki kodi hegire yo pashin tugi lonlo jimbi paro shimbi kote di shula nga zo tsagire ta tiri ki session
So then in the sixth verse, which will be the final one that we cover in this session, it says that possessions are ephemeral and essenceless. Know this and give them generously to monks, to Brahmins, to the poor, and to your friends. Beyond, there is no greater friend than gift. So essentially, this verse is talking about generosity. So in the previous verse, we learned how to purify the mind. So then, having this pure mind, we should practice generosity. So the perfection of generosity.
Shezonta Jimba Tong Gudu, Ta Tombo Jimba Tong said the Kalekabo Yerwa. Shezo Jimba Tongju Chalo Nibo, Ronshe Yerwa, Ta te Hiro Nimbo Meba, Kalagru, Ta Karze existing Meba Yerwa, Kuzo Metaba Yimba, Tabatimbo Meba Yimba. Shezo Jimba Tong Shegoba Yina, any Keson Chimbo Yeba Yimba. Any pemisi wise lega yimba. Tende chode yiris. Shazon te indu ludu chorung, ludu ki jabu deshi zombola. Any ta jimba tongus, jabu la jono lonshe mumbo yerwa. Dabu chojung jadena, any choye mare, sena chojung zodena. Any nima jila, peshe mejo ji cha si yiris. Tende keje deshi ene, any jimba tongu ko deshi ungiri. Tagareso.
So then to practice generosity, to give stuff away, essentially, at first is very difficult. We have a lot of stuff in general, possessions. So the training then is to think that these things are actually something which doesn't really have an essence. So it doesn't really exist the way we think it is. It's something impermanent. It's not stable and lasting. And on the other hand, generosity is something which is very beneficial to us and a very wise kind of action. So this is what Nagarjuna is telling the king, because the king, of course, has a lot of different possessions, right? But there will be no point for the king to just hoard all of his possessions and then have a lot of greed and stinginess with regard to these things. So rather, it would be more beneficial to practice generosity and give away some of his possessions, is what Nagarjuna is advising.
Tengune dembari kasna ngazuli juchalo ye pecho ye jimba tonga yina any jimbe longshe sene maomba yonjo mi lutin tone yon juchebu chogiri labarwa. Tanda jimba madon ne sena she dewa yina mi suki peche tondo hakugi marwa. Any sena she ne tiki tundela yedog ne su shigirwa. Shezo junsi desolu sonu tong she ne any ludugi jabula ta jimba tongurida tele keson chea ji ye mari dazi kede shigir.
So this is really true, actually. If we practice generosity and give away a lot of our possessions, then in the future it is taught that we will attain a human body, and that will have good conditions in that human life. So then, on the other hand, if we were to accumulate a lot of things and keep them, then eventually, when we pass away, we won't get to use those things, and we don't know who will in the end. It'll be all used up by someone else. And having a lot of stinginess towards our things, a lot of possessiveness, will lead to rebirth in the realm of the hungry ghosts.
Ta jabo deshe zombo ge tende ina any ngaki jimba tongi is ta jimba sula tongre se la udu any jimba tongsa ta karse yu song hebare any pendo biki hinla tongures yeden yebiki hinla tongures kanga hiro yenki gi mela te gures te song kare kare re la na gelon do bronze se anda bo la lama se anda bo te so yeden yesagi hinre jimba tongsu yuris any kalo saya mecho tulo chen mecho da bo de donga yedenki neba da bo te so donga gi hin jimba tongsa res any soso ge pamanda bo penjon da bo tobon da bo te so pendoba la jimba tonsare tesol jimba tongres lare
Gonda pendobe shingde sosuki pamatang
ani sozo gipenjo da toponda botesurwa
le troko. So then if one imagines that the king accepts this or sort of agrees to practice generosity, the question then is to whom? And there are, broadly speaking, three kinds of people to give possessions to practice generosity with. So these would then be um, the virtuous, the suffering, and those who are very beneficial to us. So these are called different fields of merit. So with regard to the virtuous, it's taught that monks and Brahmins have a lot of discipline and they have a lot of good qualities. So there's benefit in practicing generosity to them, to giving to them. Then the suffering, those who are poor, who are without food and without clothes, and who are undergoing a lot of suffering, if we give something to them, if we donate, let's say, food or medicine or something to them, then it's very beneficial for them. So therefore, it's taught that it's very important to practice generosity to those who are suffering. And then finally, there are those who help us quite a lot. So our parents and our friends. So our parents raised us and gave us all that we have now. So it's very good to repay that kindness by practicing generosity towards our parents as well as the friends that we have that help us.
ani jimba tonsa gi yu teso yina jimba tonsu de jimba kandeshile tongres tewaji lerwa jimba tonbi kasula pe misi kuga zone good behavior zone ani jimba tonya de kozol tele tende sigures ta chozo karin chimbo yi ngala sena so chogindu nga jimba tonya li koka tegindu la tende chite grumado yon tolon ne chozo ngala kara kabo sigindu la tende sene tena digi maris.
So these would then be the objects of our generosity, the ones that we should give things away to. And then how should we practice just generosity? What's the manner in which we should practice generosity? So we are told that we should be very respectful. We should, for example, think, oh, this person is very kind to me, actually. It's very beneficial to me to be able to accumulate merit by giving away some of my things. And we should not think that, oh, this beggar is giving me such a hard time, and feel kind of angry and fed up, and then practice generosity. This would not be a good way to practice generosity.
Saying jimba ngazo jimba nyole shidu trombo jigi ngala ta pesho teruji kari teruji se lana ani sosole semba gite tugi mena nga gite tugi mundu se laguris ani teye mena ngale teye me gondo se laguris kozola gaju to ye mare se le jase jimbo hiola gishenju no lagindo ta tendenda wore.
So in the course of practicing generosity, then, if someone were to ask us for something and for whatever reason we may be unable to give away something, or we simply don't have anything on us, then we have to say, sorry, I can't give this away, or sorry, I don't have anything to give. And we should not scold those who ask us for some money or something like that.
Ani shonju semba yina ta jimba tonro chi se le homo wa te so ge ke jidu kozo pe gabo shigiris ta ngone to ngala sena so chunge jile son ngala to so chunge jile son sene tende shigire ngone yena tende da wazo tu yera Gugera ta ngazo ina ngala yon kanga tengi jileson yon ngala tolongi jileson sangirwa sheson ta cheba jugi.
So it's thought then that when a bodhisattva would see a beggar, a poor person, they would actually feel very happy because they would think that based on practicing generosity towards this person, I can perfect the accumulation of merit, which is a very good thing. So they're able to sort of practice in this way, but for us it might be difficult to really feel joy in the same way.
Sheson ta te indu ngaron so pena kontro hibo yengi miji tsali yena ki shena ta te yabu hirore karsana kogi ngazo la zeba gaya koga te yero te no shin homo wa mombo ngazo tsali yena yabu re ngazo jimba tone seno so koga te yera te son da bu sono tone eni jimba don zeba te so gal nyoli shigugire se labare.
So therefore, from a certain point of view, it's actually very good if we have a very angry person around us, for example, because then we can practice patience. And then in the same way, if there are a lot of beggars around, then we get the opportunity to practice generosity and accumulate a lot of merit thereby.
Shazan te indu nomba so pugu notik pugu ndawutende yena ki shena yaburi tesol tene zeba gaya togirwa mado pugu noti mena ani zeba gaya te ungi mara ta deso yo gegin chogi yere.
So then, for example, if you guys have very naughty children, then that might be a good thing actually, because then you get to practice patience with your children. And if they weren't naughty, then you wouldn't get that opportunity, right?
Oda tende ndawo junse mombo le koya yere tene jimba tong shega obate sozo ke pesho de bengi luba no shi chogi yere ta jimba madon ne dabo jadewa ina ani sozo ke pesho de peshe madon wanda boji chogi yere shedo jimba tong shia de pemisi yabo yere jimba tong sheba ina sozo la maumba keson shiboji togi re shedo jimba tong jite nengo re sele ta tende shene ludu ke la suwa imbari ta de ngazo ko len sheba ina mune tone tega ron re ta ko len mahiba ina tini teze kala kaburo wa.
Also, Jimba Tanya de, ngwe kang la shapa na shin was.
Tini nga zo ta huma benefit shibo legirwa.
Oh,
Ngu gawa ina ta karse interest togirwa ta teno shinda wore.
So to use our possessions and in our practice of generosity is a little bit like putting our money in the bank. So there's a lot of benefit by doing so because we'll get interest and so forth. If we were to not give them away and just hoard them, it's as if we didn't use the money that we have, essentially. So this is a very important point, actually, this teaching. But we really need to sort of know how to understand it. Otherwise, it won't be of much use to us.
Jimba tone any longshe njungiri la wara. Jimba tone ge benefit result te jema nga zo juchebo chawgiri la yerwa. Shezon tel sonu tonga ina any nga zo pesho de bengal luwa no shi keson toyanduwa.
So the reason being then that it's said that if we give away our possessions now, then in the future, we will come to have a lot of possessions. So in this sense, it is like putting our money in the bank. And this is why it's very important to practice generosity.
Shedon ta maung ba chibo mare, ta ngarong la teze nyonyo yere, soso pesho dabo ina teze mele roba she, kalon dabo te jindo shewa ina, yon next month la ngarong la pesho tsu tenki tende moron roya dabo tende ge nesu dabo ji chogindu, shezon benefit te inji menji next life le remundu, tanda ron toya tende ndus. Next life rila na koso shen dogirwa, next life gugi yemi kanji koso la.
So this is not necessarily just in the future, as in a future lifetime. It's actually something very immediate. So, for example, Kempola is saying that he's noticed that if he himself has some money and then uses that to sponsor others, to give away some food and different necessary articles to others, then he he's noticed that even in just the next month or so, then there will be more people who are giving money to him. So there's a very immediate benefit to practicing generosity.
但用人把当时人把娘哩是在引进面积，你不加了白相的不带呢，人把娘哩是个给你把门都是，现在没被人把俺是的些印度，但是俺瞧中了当人吧，说是给当这部的怕带那的印度啊，但是出这个送的话，但是来那要不就可做了。
All right. So practicing generosity doesn't actually always have to do, it doesn't necessarily have to do with money or possessions. There's also something that's called the 5 gifts without greed. And in that list, then it's said that to show one's smile to others is something that's free, actually. So just giving the gift of your smile is something that you can do immediately and even without having to give anything.
我真的是，他人把的嘞，也那你七级人吧，上世纪人吧，民级吧，下级人吧，上辈人吧，那是吧？他人把个过了，现在蒙不也是，他蒙不现在嘛的也嘛的，他等到路这个搞的那个就是呢，人把当学会呢，这来开上车也嘛的，加上家不瞧人把当呀给那个的做个人是嘞，硬是 advice 的他，家不了现在，你今年俺们做了，这也吧的，他搞个也的，那时候。
So in general, there's a lot of different kinds of generosity, actually. So there's, for example, the gift of the Dharma. There are material gifts, and there is the gift of freedom from fear and so forth. But we won't say too much about that now. There's no need. But basically, Nagarjuna is saying that if you know how to practice generosity, there's a lot of benefit through that. So please engage in generosity. That's what he says. Okay.
我说他我就这里的唱歌个，给你好嘛？啥的的啦用same time，他的来个你用直接一些意思，那说他告诉你偏头也没下过嘛说。
Mm. All right. So thank you, everyone. This will be it for this session. So we'll meet again next Saturday, the same time, and you can prepare by looking ahead 4 verses that we'll cover next time.
Thank you so
那
much,
说
Kempola, Olaf. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for coming once again and hope to
Thank
see
you.
you next week. Thank you.
thank you，拜拜。
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
那说。